All right. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host, Ken Coonihan, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe that health and longevity begins with the food we eat. The goal of this podcast will be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 10 years and continue to work on it every single day. Percent of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poor suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. As a reminder, please be sure to visit my website, Eat Better Food Today, for links on this show, videos, recipes, books, and articles that our guests provide. On this episode, we're grateful to have Farmer Lee Jones. For those of you who are listening, he always wears his trademark overalls, red bow tie, as a symbol of his commitment to regenerative agricultural practices. Ever since the early days of the Chef's Garden creation over 35 years ago, he has remained tirelessly committed to ensuring that the family's 300-acre farm remains one of the most innovative and pioneering in the world. Farmer Lee enjoys fostering relationships with the chefs who look to the farm to grow vegetables that are as aesthetically pleasing on the plate as they are flavorful to the palate. Farmer Lee is unique for a farmer. He is a prestigious James Beard winner. He's been profiled on most of the major news outlets that I'm familiar with, on multiple TV shows, and including a judge on the Food Network's Iron Chef America. So in this episode, we'll explore Farmer Lee's thoughts on food, health, and longevity and discuss what continues to inspire him after many years of being in this industry. Welcome, Farmer Lee.
Hey, thank you so much for having us on.
So I'm very excited to be talking to you today because we're both trying to educate more people. I've seen some of the interviews you've done and TV shows that you've done on healthy eating. So the first question I usually start with is I believe a good start to your day begins still with a healthy breakfast. I always get mixed answers to this, from just coffee to a full breakfast. So just curious what you had for breakfast this morning.
Black coffee and some steel-cut oats and some fresh strawberries and some walnuts.
Are strawberries in season? I'm starting to see those more and more local here the last couple of weeks.
They are. We've been picking actually for 2 weeks now. They're beautiful. We covered some with clear plastic to bring the first variety on early. And I was talking to Rita, our farm market manager, here the other day, and I said, I can't think of anything better than June berries. And she said, oh, I can. I said, what? And she goes, yeah, June berries in May.
Yeah, and I bought I'll say my local supermarket, I bought some, and they were good, but then I went to a local store that basically has his own farm locally here, and there's definitely, which we're going to talk about too, but definitely a difference in the taste of those strawberries, so in a good way. So when I was kind of looking into some of your background here, I understand we're both Ohio State Buckeye fans.
Indeed.
Cleveland Indian or Guardians fans, right, and Bruce Springsteen fans.
That's correct.
So I'm just curious if have you seen all of them in person or just follow them kind of remotely?
I have not seen the Guardians, but I have seen the Indians.
Okay.
I have seen the Ohio State Buckeyes, the Ohio State University.
Yes.
And I have seen Bruce Springsteen live. My son bought the tickets for us, and he ended up not getting to go. My wife decided she was going with me. So
that's okay. I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
It was.
Yeah, I'm actually going to see the Guardians play the Mets tonight with my brother. So
nice.
Looking forward to that. So the kind of the home pantry. So I believe it's an important part of a healthy food program. If you have junk in the pantry, you're going to eat junk. If you have healthy food in the pantry, you're going to eat healthy food. So I'm just curious if we went into your home, what kind of foods we would find in your pantry.
Yeah, we have a saying that there's no such thing as junk food. It's either junk or it's food. My wife fills the pantry and she refills the refrigerator. She does not make a wrong decision on what she eats. I don't know if any of the listeners remember the old story fable, Jack Sprat could eat no fat, and his wife could eat no lean. Mm-hmm. We're kind of just the opposite of that. I like it all. I like a good bowl of Toff's ice cream. But the only meat that she'll eat is good, clean salmon. But she really looks at those ingredients. And that rule of thumb, when you can't pronounce the name on the ingredients, it's probably, there's so much in the preservatives that is not good for us. And this time of year, we're not buying much. I mean, it's coming out of the fields. She buys the almond milk rather than the milk. I prefer traditional milk, 2% milk. We drink a lot of water. We don't drink soda, an occasional glass of wine. But it's just so easy to eat right this time of year, especially. Really, I believe it's easy to eat right year round. Mother Nature provides such a natural rhythm to what we should be eating. And if we'll listen to Mother Nature and listen to our bodies, I think our bodies will even tell us. I mean, I have times when my body says, you need Swiss chard. It needs that iron in it. And there's just such a beautiful way to eat with the seasons that makes it easy.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. It's I mean, we'll kind of talk about at the very end here. It's also easy to make food at home versus some of the alternatives that are out there. I mean, you really can eat healthy and do it without spending hours in the kitchen. So can you give us just an overview of the Chef's Garden for our listeners, kind of what it is, how it kind of came to be? I mean, I've kind of read some of the articles, I understand, but maybe if you can just give us some background on its founding and how it actually works today.
Sure, Ken. Well, first of all, I do nothing by myself. My brother and I are business partners. My mother is still involved. Bob and I, my brother Bob, and I got to work for 40 years with my father 6 days a week and on the seventh day at church. We miss him sorely, yet we still feel his presence here all around us. There are, I believe, 8 of the next generation here, but everybody on this farm is part of the family. There are 168 full-time team members. We like to call them team members rather than employees. We have a profit-sharing program. There is nothing that pleases us more than when we create a profitable quarter and we can share profit-sharing checks. We're,
nice.
Of course, in a microclimate along Lake Erie. The soil we're on is all old lake bottom, about 11,000 years ago. Some of the richest sandy loam in the world. At one point, and as near as we can figure, it was the largest concentration, and I'm talking about Erie County. The farm is in Huron, and the Culinary Vegetable Institute is in Milan. And the difference is one side of the road's Huron, the other side is Milan. Out-of-towners pronounce it Milan, but... At one point, there were 330 vegetable growers in this county. As far as we can figure, it was the largest concentration of vegetable growers of any county in the world. Now, you can say, wait a minute, what about California, where there are counties that are 100% agriculture from the north to the south to the east to the west? It's true, but they're each 10,000 to 30,000 acre farms. These were what they were called truck farmers. And they went to the farmer's market, which is entirely different than what we think of as a farmer's market today. Think back to your hometown. All the listeners, think back to your hometown and think of the number of family-owned grocery stores that existed there. Every one of those grocery store owners had a grocery store buyer. In many cases, the owner was the buyer, and they would meet the farmers. The farmers would harvest their products by the day. They would drive in. My dad says he can remember a time when the farmers from this area were lined up bumper to bumper by about 9 o'clock at night heading in on Route 113. That's before Route 2. That's before the Ohio Turnpike. And they would go in and they would line up at a farmer's market, and the grocery store buyers would come. And they built relationships with every one of those grocery store buyers. And, isn't Cleveland amazing? The ethnic diversity in Cleveland makes it one of the greatest cities in America. And every one of those ethnic diversities have their own unique things that they like to grow. And farmers would build relationships with those grocery store buyers, and they would grow specific things for specific grocery stores. And it was really amazing. And, what's crazy is we had the regional distribution that we're so desperately trying to get back to. We had it right in our grasp in the 40s and even into the 50s. But it's hard for us to think about because listeners are like, what do you mean? I could be on the Turnpike and I can be in New York in 9 hours. Or from our farm, we can be in Chicago in 4.5 hours, 320 miles. The roads and the refrigeration have developed to the point where we can get anywhere in the country pretty quickly, or we can ship product from anywhere in the world, and we can have anything, anytime, regardless of seasons. And how good is that? I'm not sure. But so one by one, as chain grocery stores came into play, one by one, the small family grocery stores went out of business because they couldn't compete. It's the Walmart syndrome 50 or 60 years ago. And one by one, those small family farms went out. Ultimately, we too failed in the early 80s. I don't know if the listeners remember, but the interest rate actually hit 22%. Now we're grumbling a little bit because they're on the uprise right now at 6.5% or 7%. It may not be done, but I can't tell you where that's going to end up. But 22 was tough, and we ended up with a hailstorm and 22% interest. We were selling to chain grocery stores. Maybe some of the listeners remember the old Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. That was A&P, Kroger, Pick and Pay. Big Bear was down in Columbus, and we delivered to those places by the truckload. Low margin, high volume. We were farming chemically. We were farming the way the universities were teaching us to control weeds and control insects, because follow the money. Where's the money coming from? Pharmaceutical and chemical companies. They give the grants to the universities and say, we'd like to give you a grant for $10 million. And by the way, we'd like for that research to be done to be able to help the farmers. And I say that in quotation. But it also, that research needs to include how these chemicals are going to help the farmers. And so I believe that all of life begins with healthy soil. We are what we eat, but we are what the soil eats. And when we use the chemicals to control the weeds and the insects, you're killing the biology in the soil. Why do you think we have the runoff and the great algal bloom in the lakes? Because the biology is not in the soil to break the food down into a form that the plant can pick it up. So consequently, it's running off into the creeks, into the rivers, into the lakes, and we're growing beautiful algal bloom. Now, nobody's figured out how to do anything with that other than it clogs up the water. And we have, in fact, in the Western Basin, near Toledo, where it's the shallowest and the warmest, they've actually had to shut water down a few times when it gets really hot and the algal bloom's growing like crazy. But it's really kind of a scary situation. But that biology and the biodiversity in the soil, when we don't use the chemicals, can flourish, and it can break that food that we feed. Even the commercial growers, they feed the synthetic fertilizers it can't break down. Consequently, the nutritional level in vegetables in the last 100 years, from 1920 to 2020, the nutritional level in vegetables has gone down 50 to 80% and continuing to go down.
So I just was saying, you've been quoted as saying we're trying to farm in harmony with nature like our ancestors did instead of trying to outsmart it. So how would you define, kind of given the background that you just gave us, how would you define regenerative farming?
You know, I think everybody has their own definition. You don't open the Webster dictionary and say, here's the definition. I think the buzzword a few years ago was sustainable agriculture. Now it's regenerative agriculture. Mm-hmm. I like regenerative better. When you think of sustaining, I visualize this overweight kid in gym class, which was me, that was hanging on the chin-up bar, and I couldn't do a chin-up. And I'd hold on to the bar as long as I could. I would sustain myself as long as I could before my fingers would slowly let go of the bar. And I think of sustainability as sustaining as long as you can. Regenerative, it's rebuilding. You're trying to build for the future. The old saying was always for farmers to leave the land in better condition for future generations. But I think that we kind of try and be more inclusive, because the reality is if we can't create a profit on the farm, profit's not a dirty word, then we can't get good people. The good people are going to go to some other industry where they can make a fair and legitimate wage to take care of their families, and that's understandable. So it's about taking care of the soil. We have a saying: healthy soil, healthy vegetables, healthy people, healthy environment. And that's really the crux of what we're trying to do. That we want to be building for the future, building the soil, rebuilding the environment, doing everything that we can, inclusive to all of that. People obviously are first. Land, it's hard to say which is first and which is second. It's all so critically important. When we lost the farm in the early 80s, interest rates at 22%, the hailstorm, and the banks were closed, I stood at 19 years old and watched 25 years of my parents' work be sold off in one day at an auction, right down to my mother's car and our house. And we went back to work on 6 acres. A year later, that 6 acres went up for sale at the courthouse steps. By the grace of God, we were able to buy that back for all the money we could gather together between grandparents, and because there wasn't a bank that would loan us a dime, we had to have cash to buy it back. It was $54,000 for 6 acres and a farmhouse that we had buckets in the inside catching the leaks. And I'm not trying to create a rags to riches story, and that's not it at all, but we started over on the 6 acres and really started focusing on the quality. And I always say that God had another plan for us. And some of us, it takes a bigger 2x4 than others. And this was a pretty good thump aside the head for us. My dad felt he failed the family. We crawled away and we started over. And we started looking. It never felt right to Dad, because here's the disease you have, here's the chemical used to get rid of the disease. Here's an insect, here's the disease, you get rid of it. Think about it. Isn't it much like our Western culture of medicine? We're always treating the symptom. And so we started looking back at agricultural books from 100, 150 years ago, before they were using chemical and synthetic fertilizer. Why is it that 100 or 125 years ago that the nutritional levels were 50 to 80% higher and the health occurrences were much lower 100 to 125 years ago? With all the brilliance, with all the technology, with all the resources that we have available in this world, and our nutritional levels are 50 to 80% lower and continuing to go down. You have to eat 5 heads of broccoli, Ken, to get the same nutrition that you did in 1 head of broccoli 80 years ago. It's crazy. So as devastating as it was to lose the farm, we started looking back at the way farmers were farming. A large farm was about 100 acres, because that's about all one family could take care of. Mm-hmm. A third of it was in cover crops. A third of it was in pasture. And a third of it was in product to take to market. And it was a true sense of rotation, because they rotated that around. Today, the farmers, under the model that exists today, and I don't fault the farmers, they have to rotate between corn, wheat, and beans. You're always taking and taking and taking from that. And you're using the synthetic fertilizers to prop it up. But if you look at the way they were doing it, you can even go back to biblical times. In the Old Testament, harvest fruit for 6 years. On the 7th year, let the fruit fall to the ground. On the 8th year, you had an abundant harvest. This isn't rocket science. This is, as my dad had a saying, the only thing we're trying to do is get as good as the growers were 100 years ago. And in many cases, that's true. So what's really amazing, Ken, I'm sure you've said it, I'd be willing to bet a sandwich. I won't bet the farm. That the listeners have heard their parents say it, or they heard somebody say it, or maybe they even said it themselves. I need some vitamin C. I'm going to go out and get some, or some vitamin D, and I'm going to go out and get some sunshine. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay, so maybe we said it tongue in cheek. Maybe we don't know for sure if it's true. There's more truth to it than people understand. If you can get your mind around the idea that your body is a receptacle for energy from the sun, then it's not such a stretch to recognize that what we're doing, and the real core and part of the premise of regenerative agriculture is we put a lab in on the farm, we're testing the soil. Just like if we were to go and have blood work drawn, we find that we're high in iron, low in iron, high in calcium, low in calcium, all the mineral inputs, and we find out what the soil is deficient in. The key here is in balance. So based on those deficiencies in the soil, what we're doing is planting crop specific. We always say that it takes more management time to be able to do the cover crops than it does the crop that we're actually growing. So it could include clover, alfalfa, buckwheat, rye, Sudan grass, mint. We have a 15 species planting. 2/3 of the acreage in any given year is growing in the land. It's an unprecedented commitment to harvesting the energy from the sun. It feeds the biology. It helps build the biodiversity. The plants can pick that back up. And we're seeing unbelievable numbers in the nutrient density, nitrate oxide levels. In some cases, we're seeing 50, 100, 150, 300% higher than the USDA average in many cases. We used to think in between the rows it needed to be weed-free and clean. Guess what? We're planting cover crops in between there. You're harvesting that energy. The root can pick that up. Unbelievable results. Now, do we have it all figured out? My brother has a saying that if the scale were a mile long, we have the first inch of it figured out. But my dad had a saying that we have to continue to make mistakes at a faster rate than the competition, and we do mistakes really well. But we're on the right path, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'll just make so when a lot of people that I know, when you go to get blood work done today at your doctor, you're deficient, kind of what you're saying, then even if you're eating the right foods, like say broccoli, like the example you gave, you still have to take supplements now because those vegetables, if nobody's going to eat 6 heads of broccoli or 5 heads of broccoli, they're going to eat 1 head of broccoli.
They're not going to do it.
So you have to buy supplements. The alternative is to do what you're doing and get crops like you're growing. I mean, that's more of the answer. We're trying to. I kind of feel like we're trying to solve our health problems with pills versus the food, which has sustained everybody for thousands of years.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies would love that. And they're doing a really good job at marketing that this is your way to health.
They are.
This is the pill you take.
So why are not more, I mean, I have talked to people that are doing the way you're describing kind of regenerative farming, but why are more farmers not doing it, I guess? Why?
Look, it's supply and demand. As you started out the program with, it's an educational process. Mm-hmm. And the farmers are good people. They're amazing farmers. They're following the model that exists. And that model is to keep your inputs as low as possible, produce as many tons per acre as you can, and hopefully you can get enough in the commodity market for the product to be able to stay in business. It is a thin, razor-thin margin, and these guys are really, really good farmers. If the demand was for the nutritional density of the product rather than the tons per acre, guess what? Farmers would do it. It's moving. It's heading the right direction. I don't know if it's moving fast enough. If listeners are really interested in this, please watch Kiss the Ground.
Okay.
The follow-up to the Kiss the Ground is Common Ground. They predict that we have 60 harvests left unless we can make some serious change. And that was done 4 years ago. We had nothing to do with Kiss the Ground. We have talked to them since the documentary came out, and they're really on the right path. But it's pretty scary stuff. It goes back to the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and talks about how we've really screwed things up for the last 100 years.
Well, I think that at least the circles that I'm in, I'm starting to see more and more people talking about this or talking about it as relative to kind of regenerative farming, more nutrients like you're talking about, also helping the climate out versus putting chemicals in the algae blooms and all that stuff. There seems to be more realization. And there's a gentleman that I follow. He's at Tufts University. They're talking more about food as medicine. He's actually testifying in front of the Senate today and tomorrow about kind of exactly what we're talking about here. So it's at least the conversation today is happening a lot more than it did even a year ago, which I think is fantastic.
Yes, it's very exciting. And I'm not preaching doom and gloom. I'm saying that there is a path to move forward in a positive way, and we can rebuild the soil, we can rebuild the environment, and we can rebuild our health. Mm-hmm. But we've got to listen, we've got to act, and we've got to move, and the time is upon us.
I couldn't agree more. So what do you do? You also have a research lab there. What happens in your research lab? Why did you establish that?
When we lost the farm and we started over, we started at farmers markets because it was the only way we knew to be able to convert food to cash because there was no cash. Mm-hmm. I could tell you desperation survival stories that, quite frankly, you wouldn't believe unless you've been backed against a corner. That being said, we had the good fortune of meeting a young lady. Her name was Iris Balin. It's now Iris Brody. Mm-hmm. She went on to become the food editor at the Plain Dealer for many years. She had trained in Europe. She was a chef for a brokerage firm in downtown Cleveland, and she would come to the East Side Farmers Market on Wednesdays every week, and she kept looking for ingredients like she'd seen in Europe. And we listened to her. We were smart enough to listen to her. And behind it, or I should say in front of every really smart guy, there's an even smarter woman out there telling them what to do. And fortunately, we were smart enough to listen to her because she knew a heck of a lot more than we did. And she said, I believe that if you would grow without the chemical, if you would grow for the flavor, grow naturally, I believe there would be enough chefs that would be willing to support you that you could survive in business. And you got to keep in mind, in the 80s, farmers markets were at a historic low. My mother never went to a farmer's market. That's what my grandmother did, and she was too modern for that. And so they were going to go get the food that was convenient because she didn't have time for that. Mm-hmm. And we farmers markets literally were at a historic low in the 80s. We met Iris. She said, there's a different path. And we were so desperate to find a way to survive in agriculture. We grabbed around both of her ankles, not literally, but figuratively, and said, teach us. And she opened up the offices on a Saturday when the business was closed, and she had books spread all over this huge conference table. And we took copious amounts of notes and went back home and went to work. That's really where sort of our paths sort of met with agriculture from 100 to 125, 150 years ago, because in Europe, they hadn't fallen down this slippery slope that we have of growing. The Earl Butz, Secretary of Agriculture in the United States in the 70s, his message was to get bigger, to get out. Mm-hmm. And boy, did he send the country and agriculture down the wrong path. But that really was the impetus to start us down that direction. But the three things that chefs said that they wanted from us was flavor, flavor, and flavor. The reality was they had enough of a tune-in to their taste buds to recognize that the way we were growing vegetables in America was for tons per acre rather than flavor per mouthful. And they were looking for that flavor. Many of them were European-trained chefs that we first started with. And so our goal was to grow for flavor. We had a suspicion or a hypothesis that perhaps as we were growing for flavor, that we were probably bringing the nutritional levels up with it. And so we started, it's funny, to build a building was a big project on the farm, but you could buy 40-foot semis for $500 because the 40-footers were all put to rest early and replaced with 60-foot semis. So we could buy a $500 40-foot semi-trailer, and I can remember Dad got a telescope, and we picked up a little bit of equipment. We started measuring the biology of the soil. I can remember Dad having Jose Andreas and his team in this semi-trailer and talking about the soil and the health of the soil and how important the soil was to everything else. And so as we could, we invested in more equipment. Interestingly enough, a lot of the equipment we're using is not new to the medical world, but it is definitely new to measuring nutrient density in vegetables. And a lot of that came from the medical world, and we could pick those up. We put together a pretty fantastic lab, and we have 3 scientists on staff. We don't use any GMO. It's all about how we can get the most balance out of the soil and grow for health. Of course, Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. We believe that food as health rather than food as medicine. We tend to think of medicine as having to swallow the cough syrup Mom was giving us when we were kids. The food can be healthy and it can be really good and delicious. And that's really what we're about, is clean food. So for 40 years, the chefs have supported us. During COVID, we launched a nationwide home delivery. So if you are not in the area during the winter and you're in Naples, Florida, and you want to buy the vegetables delivered to your home, or you have an Aunt Matilda that has 3 of everything and you don't know what to get her at the holidays, get her a subscription to a box of vegetables. You have a company, buy the employees a box of vegetables once a month and reduce the health insurance costs, increase productivity, reduce sick days, buy it as a gift for your company's customers. And then we launched a farmer's market here on the farm to make our product available to individuals here in the community. Most of our customers are driving an hour away every Saturday. We're open Tuesday through Saturday now. We're open for our summer hours. We stayed open all winter long, Friday and Saturday, because everybody that's coming here is either trying to get well or stay well. It's really geared up as a clean food store rather than necessarily a farm market that's like, hey, how much is your sweet corn? We're not really looking to compete in that arena. We're looking for the cleanest, most delicious, healthy, flavorful vegetables that exist in the world. That's our goal.
So I went out and purchased your book yesterday. This is now the heaviest book that I own in my library. Just going to make that comment. But I'm just curious, to just kind of maybe share some of the traditional vegetables you grow and some of the non-traditional vegetables that you grow for a minute.
Well, I think that we grow a lot of traditional vegetables, but we look at them in ways that maybe haven't been considered. Many people ask how long the book took to do, and Chef Jamie Simpson, who is our chef liaison at the Culinary Vegetable Institute, where we do dinners that are open to the public, and we have an Airbnb now. He'll tell you that him and his team spent 2.5 years. If you were to ask my brother Bob and I, we would say 40 years of our mistakes and stupidity, and maybe a couple of successes along the way. But there's 100 recipes in there. If you think about the marketing that's done, the billions of dollars of marketing to look at a tomato or look at an apple or look at a peach or anything, and it's got to be this perfect product. Of course, we know about imperfect food, and we know about ugly food and all of that. But even if you think about, and one of Jamie's real issues, and all of us here on the farm, is reducing waste. We've all seen the commercial, 40% food waste in America, which is unconscionable. Every one of us in every county that we live in the United States have people that are going hungry every night. Mm-hmm. And it is absolutely ridiculous to have that situation when we have a 40% food waste here in America. I believe 40% is understated. I think it's higher because there's a marketing concept that things have to be in a certain way, in a certain size, shape, color, ripeness for them to be marketable. It's not true. But if you think about how majestic, let's just take, for example, Ken, a Brussels sprout. I don't know how many of the listeners have actually seen the beauty of a Brussels sprout plant. It takes 9 to 10 months. A purple Brussels sprout, it takes about 11 months. We start them in the greenhouse. We plant them out in the field in April, and we won't pick them until after frost. Because what a lot of people know is after frost, the natural sugar levels change and they're a sweeter one. If you've ever eaten a Brussels sprout that tasted rank and bitter to you, it's because it didn't have a frost and the natural sugar levels hadn't come up. We won't pick them until after frost. But you have all these leaves that come out. If the plant is 3.5, 4 feet tall, and these beautiful leaves that provide a canopy. If you can think about the Brussels sprout being on that stalk for 9 to 10 months, it would get sunburned, just like if we were exposed to the sun for that many hours a day. So by nature, those leaves provide a canopy, an umbrella, to keep the Brussels sprout from getting sunburned. I would defy anybody that's listening to your podcast today, if I blindfolded them, and you included, Ken, if I blindfolded you and had you do a taste test between a Brussels sprout leaf and a collard green, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Huh. They're in the cruciferous family. Yeah. Why can't we use the leaves of the Brussels sprout? We can reduce the waste, all the nutrients, all the water, all the love that went into growing that beautiful plant, and all we do is pick the Brussels sprout on. Heck, Jamie's even done a vegetable marrow with the stalk. So the idea is looking at that plant in different ways. The zucchini squash, we pick the squash off. You can actually eat the stems of them and the leaves of different things. So looking at that plant in its entirety and finding ways to utilize all of it and reducing the waste. And it's fun. It's fun and exciting to look at that plant in a different way. But yeah, I mean, we pick things at different sizes, perhaps. We pick them at, look, most of the vegetables in America are picked at the point where they're the highest yield, the most tons per acre, which means that the one that was ready first is actually past its prime, and the youngest one is big enough so they can get the tons per acre. What we're doing is picking when it's the absolute perfect for flavor and for taste and for tenderness and crunchiness and deliciousness, not when it's the highest yield. That's a low standard for us, is the highest yield. Some of the stuff isn't picking at the highest yield, but we're picking at the most flavor per mouthful and the highest nutritional levels, and that's the goal.
Nice.
I get a little excited talking about
I can see that.
Vegetables.
So I know you've established relationships. You mentioned Jose Andreas with chefs all over the world. I mean, you're not just selling to people in Ohio or Northeast Ohio. You're selling, globally. So what do you personally get involved when you're not doing a podcast with me? What do you personally get involved with on a day-to-day basis? Are you out visiting chefs, talking to chefs, traveling? What's your day-to-day activity like?
All of the above. And it's if I don't tend to go to restaurants that haven't invited me. I've been in there and they can't get work done because somebody in a suit and tie shows up and is there trying to sell them something. I like to go when a chef says, hey, I need you to talk to our team, or I need to do a presentation for front of house, or I need you to come in. And I would have normally been to the NRA, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Restaurant Association in Chicago at McCormick Place over the weekend. But we had a grandson that graduated in Bentonville, Arkansas. And so we flew out and went to that. But visiting chefs, talking to chefs, I'm at the farm market. If I'm in town, I'm at the farm market on Saturday morning, every Saturday. And we like to talk food and talk vegetables and exchange recipes. A lot of times we'll have a chef here in the farm market cooking something up. And we've kind of taken on this concept. I don't know, Chef Jamie and I cooked it up over drinks one night, but a concierge chef. So within reason, 8 or 10 components of olive oil and salt and a few things. Somebody's walking around the market and they're looking at a celery root, or they're looking at a watermelon radish, or something they haven't ever tried because their mom didn't cook it or their dad didn't cook it. And so they've always shied away from it all their lives. And they're looking at it kind of curiously, and we're like, hey, let's grab that and go over, and I'll just show you how easy it is to eat. And chop, 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 and we'll cook it up and we'll taste it and let them try it. And it's exciting.
That is very cool.
A lot of folks, seasoned folks, can have a recipe they can share with us. And somebody else is listening in, and then, well, I haven't ever tried that. And, well, gee, let's try it. And here's a sample. It's exciting to talk vegetables with folks that are interested in their health. And it's really kind of a community spot to be on a Saturday morning. Now we're open Tuesday through Saturday. Fun stuff.
So do you have any favorite stories? People, because like you mentioned, people are traveling to go out to see you, so people want to eat healthier. I assume they're ordering from you online. So any stories you can share about people that have started to eat your vegetables, buy your products, and had a change in their health situation?
We have a gentleman that's been coming since when COVID hit. We made the decision we were not going to furlough the farm, and we were not going to lay the people off. You don't furlough a farm. And your family, the CFO and the bankers all said you need to close the farm down. You're not going to be able to afford to keep going because the restaurants were really in trouble, and consequently it rolled down. We did the farm to family. We opened the retail farm market to the community because people were interested in safe food. It was an open air when we started. And so, it was really a situation of trying to stay open. And I've actually forgotten what the darn question was. Sorry.
No, I'm just wondering, just stories, people that you have.
The story. Yeah. Okay. So this gentleman is coming from Toledo. He was having a health issue. He was over 400 pounds. And the doctor said, look, you've got to change your eating habits. He's lost 150 pounds.
Wow.
He comes in. He talks to the chefs. We have a blast when he comes to see him now barely be able to make it in the door and have to sit down, and he's milling around, and he just feels better. And he has a food coach that works with him, and now he has the food coach using the product, and she's out in Arizona, and he talks with her once a week, and she's buying the product. I think we're all on a quest, whether we know it or not. And it's so important. We are what you eat, but you are what you eats. And that's critical. And it's nice for people to be able to come onto the farm where there's a conscientious group of people that are committed to trying to grow food the right way. And we love to talk to people that are on their own journeys, whatever it happens to be, and see what we can do to be able to offer what we've learned along the way. It's exciting. It's fun. There's a sense of urgency on our part. And I believe the people that are coming have a sense of urgency, and they feel better. It's unbelievable. We have product. We have a salad sensation and a product called Superfoods. They're a microgreen grown in soil. That actually is the one item that's testing the highest on our nutrient density of anything that we have. You can eat a package of that, and you don't have to wash it. You don't have to cook it. You can put it on a sandwich. You can put it on a salad. You can put a bowl beside your chair and munch on it. You will literally feel more pep in your step the next day. It's just your body will respond to good treatment. Garbage in, garbage out. Good in, good out.
I just read about the microgreens the other day as far as how much nutritional value is just in those little microgreens that you can eat. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, the alternative is for that gentleman that came in, he knew enough to start eating healthy. He lost the weight by eating your products. A lot of people don't know or don't do that, and as a result, right now we're spending like over $1 trillion a year on healthcare costs. So that gentleman, his alternative would have been to go see a doctor and get a prescription for XYZ and try to get healthy that way. In this case, he probably enjoyed what he was eating a lot more too. I mean, aside from
oh my
the
goodness,
health
he's
benefits.
having so much fun cooking in the kitchen and coming up with recipes. The better he feels, the more he does, and the more he does, the better he feels.
So what are your thoughts? How do we, I guess, get people more excited about eating healthy foods? I mean, you and I are obviously in perfect agreement here, but not everybody feels the same way. I mean, there's still, every time, if I go to a Whole Foods in Cleveland, there's across the street a McDonald's with 24 cars lined up waiting for a burger. So what are your thoughts on how we, I mean, I'm trying to do that through this podcast, but I'm just curious what thoughts you have.
The old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Mm-hmm.
You eat an elephant a bite at a time. Make small changes. Find things that you like. And look, this doesn't have to be a punishment. This can be a reward. It's a reward on a day-to-day basis when you eat something. If you grow your own garden, if you go to support these farmers markets, there's tremendous farmers markets in the Cleveland area.
Oh, yeah.
Build a relationship with them. It's fun for them to talk about what they're growing, eat in season. I think that you'll find so much joy in eating something that's seasonally grown. If you can grow something in the garden with a child, I think that we had to look for the silver linings in COVID because there were a lot of negative things about it. We lost loved ones during that period. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that happened was that parents actually were home and they started gardens, and the kids want to emulate mom and dad. If mom and dad are in the garden showing an interest in the garden, the kids were. I hope that we started a whole new generation of gardeners out of those kids during that COVID time. But if you can get a kid to grow something, they're more interested in trying it. It's surprising how many kids think that a carrot comes out of a plastic bag. Just start. Just engage. Mm-hmm. Just make one better choice a day. Get some greens in. Get some roughage in. Say no to some of that crap and just try and eat a little bit of fun stuff daily that's in season. You'll be surprised at how good it is. Some people are turned off by some of the vegetables they've eaten because they've eaten them out of season.
Right.
And quite frankly, I don't think they're any good either. When you're eating, there's so much difference. I mean, look at these strawberries. We're picking these berries. There isn't 1 ounce of comparison to that strawberry and a strawberry you're buying that's been shipped in. Oh, sorry. Excuse me a minute. The juiciness, the sweetness. I've got a little dripping down my chin because there's actually moisture in this. You get one of those strawberries that's shipped in, they have the hydrocone. There's no moisture in it.
Yeah, they're very dry.
This stuff is full of life and body and color and flavor. Eat the rainbow. Get as much color into your diet as possible. Mm-hmm. Eat the rainbow and try and get those vegetables in. But be particular about where the vegetables are coming from and what's in season today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, growing up as a kid, I hated carrots. But now I go to a farmer's market and the carrots taste fantastic. They don't taste anything like what I ate as a kid. So
people make the assumption that a carrot is a carrot is a carrot is a carrot. It's simply not true, Ken. There really is a difference. Guess what's our number one selling item week in and week out? Despite whether we have wine or whether we have strawberries or anything new and exciting, it's carrots. We do a marvelous job with 4 or 5 different colors of the carrots. The kids like the carrots. The parents like the carrots. The carrots remind them of the carrots they had when they were a kid and they ate them and pulled them out of the garden when they were a child. Yeah. I've had people that have eaten the carrots and they come back and told me about it and they've got tears in their eyes.
Yeah, my daughter's sent me a couple of pictures. I've got an 18-month-old grandson and he loves carrots. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Get them started early and you'll make a lifetime of difference in their health and wellness and happiness and prosperity.
Couldn't agree more. So what can you share some changes that are coming for the Chef's Garden in the near future or the next year? I mean, what do you have plans beyond what you're doing today?
We certainly believe that AI will be part of the future, Ken.
That's an interesting, okay.
Interestingly enough, we have a company out of Israel that came over and talked to us, and they want to bring a thing over that they're in the process of developing right now. If the listeners can visualize an 8-legged grasshopper that's only about 3 feet tall, and it would be wide enough you can adjust it, and it would go in between the rows. AI identifies weeds and the crop that you're trying to grow. And instead of using a chemical, it goes through and it pulls those weeds out. And it's pretty cool. I think that those kinds of things will be the future. I think things that we can do to automate. Look, it's not about replacing people. It's about making people more efficient and making the work easier for them. We have a program right now where we're using corn cobs to heat a greenhouse instead of using fossil fuel. The corn cobs heat the boilers, and the boilers run hot water through the ground. It's geothermal heating, and we can do that without the use of any fossil fuel. We're working on a project that would take us 95% off grid. There's no one, look, the technology's not there. We can't say, yeah, solar is it. Yep, I'm gonna bet the farm on solar. Is it wind? No, not 12 months a year. Is it biodiesel? No, not 12 months a year. So this system would actually take into consideration AI based on weather, wind, light, all the factors, and it would shift over based on what is the most efficient use to be able to produce that energy. And if we can reduce the consumption of the electric from the power companies, I think that it helps going off grid, and it's really, really exciting for us. The government is supporting those types of activities right now, and we're working very hard to try and move forward with that. We're going to continue to move forward as fast as we can to work towards more nutritious, more nutrient-dense vegetables, and look for the most efficient ways to do that. We believe that there's a need for a place for people to bring families and to be able to come onto the farm. The next generation is working on beef and pork and chicken production, clean food, no GMO, none of the stuff that they're using. They're grass fed, and they can, if a family wants to walk out and see cattle grazing on land or chicken foraging for insects, they can do that. If they want to come and pick their own quart of strawberries, they can do that. It's our belief and hope and prayer that there are enough people that will support this methodology of growing clean food that we can survive, and not just survive, but we can be regenerative for future generations of our family, but for other families to have a place like this that they can still come. One of the scary numbers, Ken, is that imported food number continues to go up. If we cannot change the trajectory of that product imported into the United States in a commercial level in 5 years, my prediction is that 95% of the commercial product will be imported. Labor is a continuous problem, because the reality is this work is hard. Immigrants are going to do the work, and it's either going to be done in this country or it's going to be done in another country. And the reality is that $3 a day labor in other countries and then shipping it here is cheaper, and those large companies make more margin by shipping it over here and having $3 labor. We don't believe in the use of $3 labor. That's why we lost a lot of the automotive industry, because cheap labor did it overseas and they brought it in. And the same thing now is happening with produce. It's a number that's going the wrong way really fast.
Interesting. I haven't talked to an industry, even outside of this podcast conversation, that is not having a labor problem. I mean, it's just pervasive everywhere. So, and I'll make one other comment. You mentioned AI. The one thing I did not expect, I was in IT for 30 years before I started doing this. I'd never expected us to have the word AI come up in this conversation today. That's just amazing.
Yeah. People say when they come here, it's like going back in time 100 years, but then trying to take advantage of the technology that's available. We want to use it. I think AI can be a valuable tool, and I think it can be a very detrimental tool. It is a part of the future. The competition's going to be looking for ways to use it. We have our head in the sand if we don't look for ways to embrace it, to be able to be more efficient, to produce healthy food, and to help our team work more productively and smarter. work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and the way you described it, it makes perfect sense. I just did not expect that today. So,
One of the
kudos to
exciting
you.
things we're doing right now, and it should be launching in the next couple of weeks, for years and years and years, we've had a vending machine with crap in it, which is so counterculture to us. And then people take a lunch break and they go to Subway or McDonald's and eat something terrible while we're shipping all this healthy stuff out.
Yeah.
We invested in profits from fourth quarter and building out a kitchen right on the farm. We hired a really cool lady. She's so excited about this. She's going to get to do the menus, but they will obviously include soups and salads and sandwiches. And we will be able to provide free lunches for our staff and their staff. The staff can bring families in between 11 and 2 and be able to enjoy a lunch of the same healthy things that we're shipping out.
That's
and
fantastic.
That's more supportive of the culture that we want here on the farm. And we're excited about offering that for our team. And they're excited about it too.
Nice. That's fantastic. So I know in other interviews that I've listened to, you refuse to disclose your favorite vegetable. So I was going to ask you what your favorite meal is.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just say that whatever's in season is what I want to eat tonight.
Okay.
Asparagus will be on the plate tonight. And quite frankly, a good salad. This time of year, especially in this heat, I don't need the protein. I don't want the protein. It's too heavy. Some good asparagus and a good salad. My wife likes to put some garbanzo beans. We use some walnuts, a little bit of goat cheese. We always incorporate some beets. We like to cook up 4 or 5 pounds of beets first of the week and then have them in the refrigerator already pre-cooked. I like them chilled. I don't like beets warm. And we'll chop some of the beets up and that'll go on the salad. And that salad is really just kind of there might even be some raw asparagus in there, 2 or 3 different colors. It just, you can make your meal out of the salad.
Yeah, nice.
It's what's in season today. It's the walk through the garden today is what's for dinner.
Fantastic. Good answer. All right, so today we've kind of covered a lot of topics, but we'll always want to end the show with a recipe, and a recipe that's so in the spirit of trying to get people to cook more at home and eat healthy at home. So something that people can make for under $25, less than 30 minutes, feed a family of 4, and has a few ingredients. And to your point you made earlier, you understand what all the ingredients are that you're putting into your food and onto your plate.
Well, I'm not a chef. I'm a farmer. We sell to the chefs. Right now, lettuces are a very good value. I would definitely incorporate a salad in. We're starting to pick some of the zucchini squash. I think that's an exciting time, the carrots and the squash. Protein, I think, is a personal choice. We would perhaps have a salmon, a good clean salmon, if we were going to have any meat at all. We're still using some hamburger. We use some whole wheat noodles for spaghetti and some of the tomato sauce that we harvested and created some tomato sauce from last season and make a really good spaghetti out of the spaghetti whole wheat noodle. One of the things that I'm excited about, next generation is particularly interested in following through, but we're doing a whole line of flours. It is our belief that we do not have a gluten issue in this country.
I couldn't agree more.
We have a glyphosate issue. The farmers are using varieties that produce the highest yield. Those varieties in many places in Canada and in northern states in the Midwest don't have enough season for the wheat to ripen in time. So they go in and you hear the planes buzzing and they're spraying glyphosate. And what that does is kills the plant down so it can dry off so they can harvest it. So you can't cut the wheat green. It's got to be cut dry to make the flour. Otherwise, it'll spoil. It's unbelievable. You hear people that go to Europe and they don't have any gluten issues over there with the bread. Over here, they do because there's glyphosate. We believe, now look, if you've got a celiac thing, that's a whole different level.
Right.
And I will preface what I'm saying is, I don't know if anybody's seen the commercial. I'm not a doctor, but I did have a good night's stay at a Holiday Inn last night. I don't know if you remember that commercial, but we have dove into this pretty deeply. And this are old heritage varieties. They're longer season. There's no GMO. There's no chemicals used. We're harvesting the wheat here on our farm, and then we're having it milled by a person that mills only our flour there. They're not bringing in the commercial varieties and running that through on the same mill. It's a mill that's dedicated to organic flour. And we've got several different varieties. They're old, 100-year-old varieties, and we're having great success with this. I think that that's going to be really exciting going into the future.
Well, we're going to be doing a taste test because my wife is one of those people, when we go to Europe, she can eat anything that she wants. Here in the States, she cannot eat bread, she cannot eat pasta, she cannot eat croissants, nothing. So I have to buy flour on Amazon that's made in Italy and make things for her at home because she can't eat it. So
we'd love for her to try it.
We are gonna try it. I'd much rather buy it from you than Amazon. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Sorry about the little technical difficulties we had earlier.
If that's the biggest issue we have today, we're in pretty good shape.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for having us on. We're really grateful. Anytime we can talk vegetables and soil, it's a great day.
It is a great day. Thank you very much. And my wife and I will be out to visit here in the near future as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Much respect and admiration. Keep doing what you're doing. It's important work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.